with the one and only Fred Segal here in need. We're about to keep this going, ladies and gentlemen. It's about to be a classic interview. Give him a round of applause. The pride of West Palm Beach, down near the 305. The one and only All Takes Exposed. Fred Segal is here, ladies and gentlemen. How you doing, grand sir?
Great. I'm excited. Great memories already with the song, and then going back to the '90s, talking about that was my favorite decade. Just like I was in high school then, and I was just like, and middle school, and just so much stuff that we used to do. It's not like that anymore.
Well, we're gonna make it feel like a full 90s in that way, good sir, because with me being a child of the 90s too, all of us late 80s / early 90s babies with it, or all just any 80s babies, no doubt about it. It is
Yep.
who we are as a child of the 90s. This great sir,
Yes.
Oh, Sex Exposed. I've known this great gentleman, ladies and gentlemen, on Twitter for about, I say, 6 years, 7 years at least. He has seen me be off of Twitter, unfortunately, because of Twitter nonsense, and then thankfully getting my account back and being able to be there with this. But great sir, I have to ask you, what for you was the impetus to start what has led to be a wildly popular Twitter account, over 500,000 followers, and a book that we will get into in major detail that's forthcoming for you to share? What made you start this great account?
It was just, I had just been, I mostly follow Miami stuff, Miami sports, like the Heat and the Dolphins, and then I also, like, you have football and you have basketball, University of Florida. That's where I went. And I used to you always remember what the national commentators would say about your team. So when they say something about your team, so you take a guy like Skip Bayless or Colin Cowherd, they say stuff every day. They don't remember what they say, but you remember what they say if it's about your team. And then when something happens, they'll say something contrary to it, like as if they already had said it. Like they talked about it and they said it, they agreed. They thought the player was good when they didn't already, and you remember that. Mm-hmm. And then also they always would post on Twitter, like, just like I called 2 days ago, this happened. But they never would say, like, a couple weeks ago I said that they wouldn't even make the playoffs, and they did, So I just decided, hey, I'm just going to start posting all this stuff. At the time I was practicing as a lawyer, and I was and I knew how to do the search terms. We had gone through all that stuff about doing the search terms. And it was the same similar search term for Twitter. So I'd find a way to get the stuff that they said prior to. And I was just like, I'll start this account. Well, I didn't mean for it to start it and it become like a big account. I just meant to upset the journalists, not to just to make fun of them, not to make it a big. But the first like week or so, like an account from a local station in somewhere thought it was cool, and then they talked about it on their radio, and then all them, they followed it. Like, so then I had like 300 followers. And then it started to happen with a bunch of other local stations, and then it just became bigger. And then people started sending me all the stuff, so I'd have all sorts of things to choose from. But you'd start off, like, you'd say a coach was fired, and I would say, I would remember that this coach was fired. This person said that they were great. Mm-hmm. A great hire. So you look up on like Wikipedia or something the day they were hired, and then you just type in their name, and then you put tweets from that day, and then you see all the takes from that day, and you start saying that. That's how I found them at first, and then all sorts of opportunities came up. Like during the game, it became big because a team would go up by 14 points in the first quarter, and then everybody would, in football, and everyone would say that this game was over. Mm-hmm. And and they come back and lose, and that's the best, because that's where you would save all them. And now there's the bookmarks. I mean, my mind thinks in a way, if a team starts off winning like 14 zip, thanks, appreciate it. If a team walks up and is saying, so it's fixed, Air conditioner. Okay, thanks. Thanks so much.
And by the
Air
way,
conditioner.
this what happens in Miami sometimes when the AC goes out. It's important that it's handled with that, and Fred is handling that AC all the way. So that is
Yeah, and then
great.
if they're gonna come at a time, whenever time they say they're gonna come, you got to get them at that time because you don't want to mess with
Yep.
the air conditioner. So yeah, so whenever a team goes up in a game, very big, automatically I'm bookmarking all the stuff from the beginning of the game. It happened right away. I can tell you the game that happened in the tournament. Baylor versus North Carolina. Yeah, that game. North Carolina went up. I started doing all the things, and then Baylor came back. And then when it got to overtime, I started pressing all the bookmarks of that North Carolina was going to lose because they blew the lead. So automatic bookmark. So if it's a really good college football team like University of Alabama, if they score on the first drive of the game, then all journalists, this is going to be a blowout. Unstoppable.
Yeah, you know, about that, Fred, is something where for you, with how the account has gotten bigger, you would think that there would be people, particularly in our field, and specifically like mine in terms of just being journalists, that would say to themselves, maybe I shouldn't go all in on prediction and
Right.
just try to preferences. And you love in terms of when people try to have that wonderful excuse quote that they'll try to make. And what's that famous excuse quote that you will not allow those people
To be fair,
to be
no,
fair?
in the context of to be fair, if it's already, if it's the worst of the to be fair is if like to be fair, everybody thought that. If it's already, if you got it wrong, you got it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I don't usually do ones like if a player gets hurt. Like if someone predicted the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl and Mahomes got hurt, I wouldn't use their tweet. But that would be like something to say to be fair about. That would be like, I guess, okay. Like, to be fair, I predicted this thinking that Mahomes was going to be available this season, Like something like that happening, I'll give him a pass because, hey, I mean, like the Chiefs need him and you predict all their predictions with him. But like, other than that, just to say, to be fair, everyone thought that. To be fair, I don't like that at all. It's, yeah, maybe everybody thought it, but it's still funny.
And they decide to tweet it. They decide to go ahead and tweet it.
Right.
For you, what was that first tweet where you said, "Man, like I really have something here that I didn't expect," as you were mentioning, and this became a thing?
Well, I think I started maybe in December, and I think the tournament when it became a thing when Sports Illustrated wrote about it, SportsIllustrated.com. Someone SportsIllustrated.com wrote an article on it and kept tweeting it out, and then it started becoming really big at that time. And then all these other people wanted to talk about it, but it was a tournament in I think it was 2016, the tournament, whatever tournament the guy made the shot for Villanova to win.
Mm-hmm. Chris Jenkins.
This whole tournament, yeah, Chris Jenkins. That game was a great game. But the Texas A&M was up. I think they were down about 15, 14 points with less than a minute left and tied the game. It was a comedy of errors too. Comedy of errors. Some really like just no calls. The refs, you got to have all the working, like turnovers, no calls,
incompetent college referees.
Yeah. Lucky shots, missed free throws, all the work was in that. So that's the one that really was like, I mean, everybody was already talking about how the SEC had lost all the teams in the tournament or something like that. So I posted that one, and that was big. Everyone's watching the tournament, so it's always good when it's a game that everyone's watching.
Yes.
Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, something like that. But the whole world's watching that one game. That's always where it picks up big. And that the World Series, stuff like that. Baseball's so slow, you can accumulate all your stuff in the middle of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, I'll tell you what else happened that year. Was later in the year was the championship game between the championship series between the Warriors and the Cavs. The Warriors were up 3-1, and LeBron was just taking it. Like everyone was just shitting on him
Yes, they
to the
were.
highest amount.
Yes, they
Yeah, highest
were.
amount. Yeah, and then he came back, and and that was really because the Warriors had gone 72. They won 73 games that year.
73 and
There was no
9
way they were going to win. But the series before was also good. It was when
with the Thunder.
the Thunder were up
3-1.
3-1, and
Yep.
then this game 6 it was the game that Klay Thompson just went out. They were losing by the fourth quarter. Klay Thompson just made every shot
Yep.
possible, and then that was it for them because they weren't going to win Game 7. But when the Thunder went up 3-1, that was big too. That series was big too. And then later in the year, there was the World Series. The Cubs went up. The Indians went up 3-1 over the Cubs, and then in Cleveland, and then Cubs won the World Series too. So that was a big year, 2016. Really kind of just had all that stuff going. And the series are the best. The series, because you have all the time in between games to really accumulate all your stuff and find all the things. Yeah, so it's good with the series. So those were the best. It never has been the same. It hasn't been as good as that since 2016. Those were the best. Those series were the best. Maybe the Super Bowl with the
Falcons. Yes, the Patriots and Falcons.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was a good one.
Including the one great Jeannie Bouchard, who I had a pleasure to interview once, and who's truly a wonderful person, actually, Jeannie Bouchard. And someone who literally had one of those famous old-time Old Texas Exposed where she said that she would go on a date with someone if the Patriots came back, and she owned up to. This is what I love.
Yeah, she did. They look pretty cozy on that date.
Oh yeah, they're good, and they're still good friends with each other, even if they didn't go to jail full time. Somebody in jail, but they really still talk to each other. He was from Ohio, not the guy that started Ball Sacks Media, which we'll get into all that or whatnot.
Oh, really? That guy?
Well, it wasn't him actually, but it was another guy from Ohio that I think may know him or not, but it just magically happened like that, and how it came to be with that. We are here in Overall Overtime, here on Spotify Live and for the Believe Network, with the one and only Fred Segal of Old Texas Exposed, Mr. Old Texas Exposed, for the Price is Right anthem right now that we have to bestow to somebody. Who for you is the hot taker that goes cold all the time? Is it one Whit Bayless? Is it one Nick Wright Rising? Is it one Stephen A. Smith? Or is it a personal favorite of both of ours who makes us laugh towards this day with the NFL draft coming? One Benjamin Albright of where he's still is so mad at just us pointing out him just wanting to say, oh, Deshaun Watson wouldn't even be draft eligible for him. I mean, he wouldn't have said it.
Which guy? Which player was that with him?
It was Deshaun Watson, and he also, they was Lamar Jackson. I think he said something too as well. But and by the way, Benjamin Albright, he's not anti-black quarterback per se.
No, he's not. He's grown up since that time. Around that time, he used to block everybody. He used to block me, but now he kind of admits it. He admits everything. He occasionally will nitpick, but he will admit it now. I mean, he's grown up since that time. But he used to block. I think he loved. I think he really liked Geno Smith. I think Geno Smith was one that really made people look bad. He really liked Geno Smith. I think that was. And Deshaun Watson. I don't think he would. Deshaun Watson caught as much heat as Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson caught more heat than Deshaun Watson.
But that's
coming out of college, because Deshaun Watson had won the championship and everything. But he still was overlooked in the draft. I mean, Trubisky was picked over him, and who was that draft? It was Mahomes,
and
Trubisky, and him. Okay, so Mahomes was okay. Yeah. So yeah, Trubisky was picked over.
And you had people trying to say that Deshaun Kaiser was the better, like Deshaun. Had too with that, and it was just the way that. It's one thing to say that if you didn't think he was a first round quarterback or whatnot, and it's another thing, which is still its own problem. But to go and make the leap and think because what you saw from Taj Boyd, and the thing that he wasn't even worthy to be drafted, in your opinion, it's just some insane, wild, like,
I was weirded out by Taj Boyd. I thought he was a pro guy for sure. I don't know whatever happens to these people, but yeah, Deshaun Watson is a totally different quarterback, and he was more talented than Deshaun Boyd than Taj Boyd the whole time Taj Boyd was there. Taj Boyd was a great quarterback, but he was never as talented as high as Deshaun was.
And he never had. And Deshaun, even though he had Mike Williams in terms of Deion Kane as his receivers, like he didn't have Martavius Bryant, Sammy Watkins,
right.
DeAndre. I mean, my goodness, and C.J. Spiller. Could you have imagined that team? But even though Taj was great, and I felt still got the short end of the stick in the NFL.
I don't know,
but
I think Spiller was gone by Taj Boyd time, but Spiller came out in like 06 maybe. So he was around 07 maybe, and then Taj was around like 2013 was his last year, but he definitely had Hopkins for sure, and he had
Watkins and Brown. He had all of them.
Yep.
He had all of them, and then the year after was when Mike Wills and Deshaun came there.
Yeah, Deshaun had the possession guy who's on the Raiders now, is really good. What's this?
Yeah, I mean, Hunter Renfro, the whole thing. He had Adam Renfro, and then Hunter Renfro.
That's it.
In that major way with it, man. But between that, another one that's so bad, and why I get at a lot of my NFL draft colleagues with this, and how it's just so funny, like we see these whole entire like adulation for these whole mock drafts, and we have amnesia over things. Well, we can get into Mel Kiper stuff a bit with that. But with Matt Miller, and seeing how Matt Miller is now on ESPN, this man literally, and to his credit, he didn't delete this tweet.
Russell Wilson.
Oh, no, that's not this. He had Jake Fromm, proudly, Fromm, as his QB1. Oh, my goodness. And was proud to say, hey, teams, clearing on my draft board, QB1, Jake Fromm, in file. It's like...
In 2017, Jake Fromm was a freshman. It was a great year for Georgia, but they lost in the championship. It was to the last pass. He was really high up on everybody's board. But he wasn't great at anything. So but he was really high up on the board, and he had a great game that game too. People forget, but yeah. By the time he was a junior, there was no way he was everybody's top quarterback. That year, people were speculating for 2 years ahead as him being the QB. What draft was he in again? Was he in the Josh Allen draft? No.
He was
in the Burrow Tua draft.
He was Burrow Tua draft.
Yeah, right. He was picked late.
Yeah. Like no one was in demand for him with that. But you see those takes with it. For you, and then of course Mel Kiper's Jimmy Clausen tape, which he before Twitter really was a thing with that, but it's just something where he still hasn't retired with this. But how do you feel when you see these people? And we're all talking sports. It's not like we're talking politics and making grave political opinions about real life matters. But you see these guys get rewarded, and there's no real accountability for a lot of these really awful takes that you have a lot of draft experts on Twitter who don't have that recognition or that prominence, and they're way better than those people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's it, it's about the people who really go all in on guys. The draft is hard. There is a little bit of an unfair factor in the sense that these guys are willing to talk about every player, they study every player, and when you do the draft, you're going to be wrong on some of them. So if you highlight those, just those, but if you go all in on something, like really all in, it's it's tough. I mean, yeah, now I feel like there's more accountability in the sense that people remember it. Mel Kiper made sure that everyone was going to remember Jimmy Clausen crap, but Jimmy Clausen was a really weird hang up too. I mean, at the time, Jimmy Clausen was not favorably looked at as a top quarterback by every single person. It was really weird that Kiper went on that hill because he's usually pretty sure about his hills. Like, but he knew that Johnny Manziel wasn't. He didn't like Johnny Manziel at all. He didn't like Tebow at all. I mean, he knows not to go to do that, and he did that with Clausen. It was really weird, and people always speculate that he was best friends with his agent, or that's the type of thing that he does, pushes guys who he's friends with the agent. But that was speculation. He denied it. But it was just a really weird thing with Clausen because he's really big on not going on these hills, and I don't remember if it was he didn't like Lamar. Did he not like Lamar? Or did he not like Josh Allen?
He wasn't high on Lamar neither.
Yeah, he wasn't high on Lamar, right? Lamar and Josh Allen kind of bunched together because.
Well, he thought Josh Allen had like the potential, like Matt Miller. He's like, oh, I love the inside. He's got to get hot, but it was more leeway for Josh Allen. It was never in the tight end. Never any thoughts of like how Bill Polian, honestly, and his nonsense. When Kiper.
Oh yeah, the receiver.
Yeah, they always at
Booger McFarland still takes a lot of crap. He had him as a receiver. He had Lamar Jackson as a receiver. And why would Lamar Jackson automatically be a great receiver? I mean, like, what? There's plenty of fast, athletic guys. I mean, like, why would he automatically dominate at receiver?
And you know what, Jonathan Vilma, he blocked me when they had played Mississippi State in that Gator Bowl and that great Mississippi State defense with Jeffrey Simmons and Jonathan Abrams and Montez Sweat. And, and how there was no chance because really only Smith was the only decent receiver for Louisville at the time, and he wasn't catching the ball consistently. Lamar had no chance in that game. And Jonathan Vilma was at halftime saying, it's nice and all that, but I think Lamar should really consider playing wide receiver in the NFL. And I just simply went and got the video of him saying that and also being critical of him saying that, particularly with him being a prominent player that he was at Miami and him being a very smart guy, Jonathan Vilma, and being aware maybe of like the stereotypes towards black quarterbacks that you probably wouldn't want to rush and say that, but like highlighting that, and the guy just went and blocked me on Twitter for just simply
he probably just blocked anybody who talks about that now. They have these like reflexive blocks. They just block people who are going to give them, who are going to go in on them. Yeah, he was a big Miami guy. He's from Miami. He's, and Lamar is a South Florida guy. He's a Palm Beach County guy. Yep. I'm in Palm Beach County now, but he was a Palm Beach County guy. So him, the guy from, and you knew he didn't have a good enough arm, but nobody was touting him. The guy from Michigan, Denard Robinson.
Yeah,
everyone knew he wasn't quarterback.
Everyone could see that.
Right? Because he didn't throw it. But that's what they were trying to peg Jalen Hurts.
Mm-hmm.
The same factor as Denard Robinson. Now Jalen Hurts doesn't have as good of an arm as Lamar Jackson. He doesn't throw it as well as Lamar Jackson. And I think that that's really kind of what they were. Jalen Hurts never did throw it that well as well as him. So, but they tried to peg him as a Denard Robinson.
Mm-hmm. and,
Yeah, yeah.
and just someone that didn't throw at all. And
Right. Yeah, Denard really didn't have much of an arm. There was a lot of guys like that who were so athletic that they used them a quarterback anyway. UF had a guy like that, but he wasn't even close to as good as Treon Harris for
yeah,
Miami.
that didn't end that well for Sean. You know, I'm glad you got the
He
scholarship.
was great. He was great for like 4 games, and
Mm-hmm.
then the Vanderbilt coach, Derek Mason,
That makes sense.
decided like, hey, let's just contain the outside, don't rush inside, and make this guy throw from the pocket. And he was toast. He was a great quarterback in high school, Treon Harris. He played for Central High School, but he was not. No, he played for Booker T. Washington High School. His dad's the coach. Yep. Along with the receiver for the Gators, Antonio Callaway,
Oh,
who
yeah.
can't stay out of trouble. He was a great player for UF.
What a waste of talent. And
yeah, what a waste of time. He can't stay out of trouble. He never could.
he
He's
was
always in trouble for something.
he a thing, by the way, because I was looking to see where he was at or whatnot, and he's only still 25. Antonio Callaway, which is kind of wild thinking about his whole life.
Yeah,
He was on the Chiefs practice.
I don't know what he was thinking.
Yeah,
he was great at UF.
Yeah,
he was great. Like yeah. But he just always was in trouble. And he eventually got kicked out of school.
Yeah,
for like he had a whole credit card scam, and he had an assault case that got thrown out like within the student thing, the student. But he's just always had trouble following. Yeah. So the one that really got away from UF was the cornerback who just left, J.C. Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
He got kicked out of school too for something, and he was proved to not do anything wrong. We had him for a year, and he got kicked out of school. So those guys, but the quarterback thing, it's a thing. It's definitely a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Guys like it just here's the thing. Guys like I get the trepidation with Jalen Hurts. He never had a great arm. If Jalen Hurts was just a pocket quarterback, he would not be a quarterback prospect based on arm alone. It's all of everything that he does. But guys like Kellen Moore, people love to try to weasel him into being a quarterback when an NFL quarterback when his arm wasn't good at all.
Was it like
Kellen Moore was the ultimate guy who was like a college quarterback. UM had a guy like that during their great team, Ken Dorsey. Mm-hmm. Ken Dorsey was the most obvious deficient pro quarterback. Danny Werfel, UF had that.
Oh, Danny.
They badly wanted Danny Werfel to be a pro quarterback. Badly.
Yep, I did too. I thought, this guy.
He did not have a great arm.
Like he's hitting Ike Hilliard and Risha Anthony and Jacquez Reed and like this guy is looking like the next guy. Like he's out. Why is Peyton getting all the love? And then you saw him. Yeah.
He was great. He was great timing. We had a ton of other quarterbacks that had great arms that couldn't do what he did.
Yeah.
He was great. Spurrier loved his timing, and he thought he could be like that in the NFL. Werfel used to throw at perfect time, exact spot, even though it wasn't going hard. It would hit the guy right there. Yeah. But we had guys like Doug Johnson and Jesse Palmer who couldn't hit the. They couldn't run it the same way. They came after Danny Werfel.
Right after.
Yeah. So those guys, but
right. Well, you know what, Brad?
It's a thing.
I want to ask you, man, because I want to get in towards this love for both Miami and UF that you have, because this is what for you? Say if they play in a future national title game in this whole college football, American football, corrupt era with this, but if they play in a future national title game, who would you go?
Oh, it's not even close. I mean, I hate University of Miami. University of Florida fans. University of Florida and University of Miami absolutely hate each other. You think University of Florida and Florida State hate each other? And you think Florida and Miami and Florida State hate each other? It's not even close to the same. as Miami and Florida. They absolutely despise each other. I've always liked UF. My father went to UF, so he always trained me to be a UF fan. So growing up, I was a UF guy. Was really good when I was growing up till I was like 11 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Dennis Erickson took over. He was pretty good for a while, and then he left, and then they got all this probation.
Yeah.
And but Miami was the team. Miami is more of a city team. There's a superb amount of Miami fans, extraordinary amount of Miami fans who aren't alums of the school. It's a really expensive school. Like it's just off. It's just unbelievably expensive. University of Miami. It's so it's not like a place that like people everybody wants to go. I mean, you can go to any other school in the state; it's so much cheaper. But
And how they want to be
University of,
like an Ivy almost sometimes. How they want to try to present themselves.
yes, exactly. It is so expensive to go there. But University of Florida and University of Miami used to play each other every year, and the Gators took them off the schedule. And Miami always talks about how we were scared and all that. UF just wants the extra home game. They get so many. They get more money when they make more money for the department. But Miami has never got over that. But UF at Miami just do not is like absolute hatred. And they played 3 years ago. It was the first game of the year, but it was a week before the season started. So it was the only game on.
It was that zero game. Yep.
It was a week zero game, and it was big. It was in Orlando. They held it in Orlando.
Mm-hmm.
And UF ended up winning. We were down the whole game. We had a quarterback, Felipe Franks, who was just throwing interceptions off the wazoo. We had Dan Mullen. Dan Mullen falls in love with quarterbacks. He loved Felipe Franks. He loved him. And then when Felipe Franks got hurt, we had this guy Kyle Trask come in. He was so much better.
Better.
He did that too this year. We had Emory Jones. And then we had this other guy, Richardson, who was really good.
Yep.
And he wanted Emory Jones to play because he loved Emory Jones. He trained Emory Jones for every year. And Emory Jones he was not accurate.
Mm-hmm.
So and he got fired. But that was another guy thinking about Dak Prescott. He got completely shit on after college.
Mm-hmm.
Colin Cowherd said Dak Prescott's going to be great. Will be a backup in the NFL at tight end.
and look at that. And has this thing where both you and the Funhouse Twitter page really capture his I'm gonna take every single take possible to say I'm right in the end.
Yeah.
As he does.
He changes his takes a lot. A lot. He did that. Cam Newton was one guy.
Oh, yeah.
He flipped back and forth with Cam Newton. And Aaron Rodgers too. He does that with Aaron Rodgers also.
Mm-hmm.
But he flips back and forth with Cam Newton and Aaron Rodgers. And now he's like, yeah, I knew Cam Newton wasn't as good as everyone said.
And then Aaron Rodgers hates that Aaron Rodgers doesn't like him and doesn't go on his show. So he
why would he sometimes gets it right. Like he's been anti Baker Mayfield forever and just completely shits on him, and that looked like it was okay. And now he'll brag about that. But he does flip a lot with the quarterbacks. He does talk about how he loved Tua. It took like 2 games for him to dislike Tua.
Mm-hmm.
For him to go from Tua is going to be amazing. He's going to be the best quarterback in the draft, and then 2 games, Tua doesn't have it. Really. That's all it took for him. And every Dolphin fan remembers that. But
they do, man. They do. And he's still gonna have that whole narrative until something happens this year and we'll see with Mike McDonald. And you may clip this in terms of any take with that. You're full free with it, but it's something where I'm very skeptical of how that's gonna go.
Yeah.
Where a good guy like Joy Taylor, who obviously is co-host or whatnot, who's like a good colleague.
Joy. I mean, she has the goggles on. I mean, she's always hoping for the best. But like, Yeah, I remember her when she was down here doing radio. And but the Dolphins, we assume it's going to go bad. The Dolphins haven't had a good thing happen to them in 20 years. So they're probably the worst franchise in the 20-year history. Maybe the Browns. Browns are probably worse. In 20-year history, besides the Browns, there's no worse franchise than the Dolphins. Dolphins they've made the playoffs like twice. They always make the stupid free agent signing.
Mm-hmm.
They signed Brandon Marshall for like a gazillion dollars, and the
Yes,
guy
they
hated it
did.
here after like 5 minutes. Uh, they signed all those guys down. We finally have a good receiver, a great receiver.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. You know, they
Yep.
haven't had a great receiver in years.
And I'm gonna tell you, man, it's funny that you said that because me being a loyal fan of the New York Paper Planes, i.e., the New York Jets, all I can say is, oh no, oh no, oh no, 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 no. I mean,
The Jets have had more success in 20 years than Dolphins for sure. I mean, 2009, 2010, they were good. They were really good.
we were, and then
Yeah.
Rex. It seemed that he was gonna be an iconic coach forever. Now he's a hot taker on Get Up in the Morning in the major way that he's become like that.
He was born to do that.
He was, and he's a great guy. He's a great guy,
I don't
but
know why he doesn't just say running. Well, he can run defenses for his life. Like, why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't he just do that?
he
Because
just
he just wants to hang out, you know?
he's just is in that mode that once you become head coach, he just
Yeah.
doesn't see himself as just being a number two for anybody anymore. Like his
Mm-hmm.
brother obviously is never gonna be a head coach, but he's
Yeah.
comfortable being number two with that. And that is something I want to ask you, man, because if there's been anyone who, like, you've just been able to repost their whole mistakes and ridiculous, tweets and
Oh yeah.
that, but is there someone that has like not only taken it in a bad way, because there's some that are able to take it in great ways and not be
Yeah.
sensitive about it. But has there been anyone that have like befriended you or been on a friendly basis since you've done this from like the likes in this media world?
Oh, who's just stopped being friends with me?
No,
Because I
who,
oh
who became friends with you even if you were highlighting?
oh yeah, a lot of them work. A lot of them start out that way. I have a lot of people who I talk to, journalists I talk to on a regular basis who I met them because of, or like I started talking to them on Twitter because of the
Mm-hmm.
that I was using their tweets. They're the ones who don't care. I mean, they're all like local guys or some national guys. They're the ones who don't care. The guys who the newsbreaker guys, they all like, they don't really do any hot takes. They just,
Mm-hmm.
the only time you can get them is like if they make a wrong scoop. But there are guys. It really all depends on, in terms of your question about who is the biggest hot taker. It depends on, you talk about a guy like Nick Wright. Nick Wright. I mean, all those guys are making a lot of money, and they're making a lot of money based on being provocative. So what, I don't think that they necessarily go into a show thinking about what do I actually think fully, or more of like, what can I say based on what I think that sounds outlandish and people will talk about. And that's inevitably going to end up being, a lot of it's going to end up being wrong. I mean, that's how Stephen A. Smith does it. Stephen A. Smith is very engaging. He's very enthusiastic, but nothing he says is anything to me, is something that I wouldn't have thought of myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like he just says it in a way
That
is very engaging. Like it's,
that is
yeah,
blasphemous.
so it's
That
like,
is
he also
blasphemous.
thinks that too. Stephen A. Smith doesn't go into something thinking about like what's the best take, like what's the best. It's the most thing that's going to people talk about. So,
Mm-hmm.
but then those guys all obviously would be on my feet a lot. But those guys also have the social media, especially with the Fox guys like Nick Wright and Colin Cowherd. The Fox people will post Nick Wright takes from that show and the clip of it with a quote every day, like 5 of them.
Yes.
So it's always preserved in memory. there are probably plenty of local guys, like a guy out of Denver or a guy out of Houston or something, who do that shit all day long. But there's not a social media guy who's posting all their takes, so you don't get those really as much. So those guys are going to be used the most because everybody sends me their stuff. So that's really like Colin Cowherd's like that, Nick Wright's like that. Any of those guys from Fox, Stephen A. Smith to some extent. They really have been pushing Stephen A. Smith stuff. Like he has, like they'll build like a big image. And they'll have like a quote in like large text of all the quotes. They are
all the money they're paying, Fred.
Stephen Smith talks about. Let me tell you, they're gonna lose.
It's all the money that they're paying this man.
Yeah.
That is blasphemous. That is blasphemous.
I mean, and you're gonna laugh.
Yeah, like he that's why Stephen A. Smith gets so much money, because that's why people talk about him, because he says stuff like that. Me talking about sports would be like, well, I think you have good run game. It's like boring as fuck,
Yeah, man, you're gonna laugh. I met up with Nick Wright actually a few weeks ago here in Manhattan, where he was here, and then Joy and Alex had visited him.
Oh yeah, Joy.
Like so that was just a fun.
Who's that guy? Oh yeah, the other guy from the show. I don't know who that is.
Oh yeah, that's me right there. So
that's
me right there. that
you're wearing a hat.
I was not. Chris Broussard did not get a major tan out of nowhere. Oh my goodness.
Broussard used to get.
Yeah.
He stopped scooping. He used to get a lot of crap for his scooping.
He sure did.
It sometimes felt as if he was getting. He was really kind of getting led astray by like agents or.
Yeah, he was. And the worst thing, Fred, is when I was at SB Nation at the time, and the whole entire chat that we use. I literally forgot. It's the chat.
The WhatsApp.
It was Slack.
Or the business one. The business one. Yeah.
It was Slack. Will they use Slack? Yeah. So Slack, would just repeatedly just say my sources and have a photo and gif of him right there for every comment. I'm like, y'all are just abusing this poor man who is not like. Yes, he definitely has made really high-profile mistakes, but he's not an unbearable soul towards people like, unfortunately, a lot of other NBA media people have become. But
well, you have to. You can't do that. You can't do what those guys do without being really, really, really subservient to these. Because when they say that this coach is getting interest from this team, it's like the agent who gives them the scoop, who's telling them to write that, and they have to do it because then the agent will give them. But my sources, but it was spelled SAUCAES. Yeah. Yeah, he's gotten. Stephen A. Smith broke the LeBron. He got so much shit for it. This is before Twitter really blew up. He broke the possibility, the first guy to break the possibility of LeBron and Wade, and we remember this because we were the Heat. LeBron and Wade and Bosh all coming to play for the Heat. Mm-hmm. It was being discussed, and it was something that was a high possibility. He was the first person to say it, and everyone just laughed at him.
Yep.
And that was like 10 days before it happened, and it picked up for just like this big 10 days. Brian Windhorst made a career out of it.
Yes, he did.
But Stephen A. Smith was that. I don't know who he got it from, but he doesn't really scoop often. But he was laughed at, and Stephen A. Smith was not. He had just gotten kicked off of it. He's gotten fired from ESPN, or just not renewed. Like this, he was in purgatory. He was like, he made a huge comeback.
Yeah,
he made a huge comeback.
He made.
He's like the number one guy in sports media.
Yeah, and this is the thing, Fred. It's just something where he, has really been able to like parlay that and even with what he did to Max, which is really ridiculous what he did to Max with it. But now having this daily rotation of guests, and now, Lord, him and Chris Russo, oh my goodness, like, like, sorry, rest of America, sorry for us in New York for giving you these personalities that can be so overbearing with that. And of course, Chris Russo's former partner, Mike Francesa, and all of the incessantness of him with that. For you, does he take the crown of having the worst takes over Skip, over Stephen A, over Nick Wright? Does he take the crown, sir?
Probably does, and I'll tell you why. Mike Francesa is, out of all these guys, you talk about Mad Dog, you talk about Cowherd, Stephen A, everyone, Nick Wright, they're all personalities. Skip, 100%. They're all personalities. They craft a personality on air, and their thought is first over anything is to make good, provocative things that people are going to talk about. Not their first thought is what actually is great, a sensical thing to say. It's always what's going to make, because that's how they get their money. If they weren't doing that, even though the people who complain about them, they would also say they're boring. So you have to do that. So a lot of that factors into why they say all these things. Mike Francesa has no gimmick. That's his personality. That's what he says. That's what he thinks.
Yep.
And it could easily be translated as a gimmick. But by the end, with that guy Funhouse he was just reading golf scores off the Louis stays and he parred third hole. And then what laugh is that again? That's above
the Kawhi
Leonard.
laugh.
Kawhi Leonard laugh.
I got the sound effects like that.
Awkward laugh. Yeah.
Fred, I gotta like that, man. But yeah, he would do that, and it would just be. What made it so funny is that he wasn't trying to be a parody or he's being all serious, and that's
all serious. There was nothing unauthentic about Francesa. Nothing.
Yep.
He was completely authentic who he is. That was not a character. It was not a gimmick. That's who he is. And he knew very little. You could tell by the end. A lot of times he was looking at his phone. It was kind of sad because he knew a lot more. I mean, Francesca was in the studio during the NCAA tournament in the early 90s. And he was also in the studio for college football.
Yeah.
So he was really, he knew a lot. He got lazy. And Stephen A. Smith takes a lot of shit for just getting certain facts dead wrong or getting players dead wrong. But when the fuck does he have time to read about anyone? That guy is all over the place every day. I can't even imagine how tiring that must be for him. He's everywhere. He definitely earns whatever salary they give him. I mean, I guess people don't think that people should be making that salary, but that's the market. But he definitely works very hard. I can't even imagine how tiring it is to do all that, to put on that face and do all that that just energy, to bring all that energy that he does, to do that shtick all day long. Of course he's not going to remember names or know players. He probably talks about things he doesn't even know about. I don't even know how he could have time to know about baseball, football.
And don't get me. You get the MMA, UFC community on him with that?
Yeah, the problem with MMA is that everyone tends to be this guy who fought another guy and talks about how he's going to win and smash the guy. That's every fight. That's how they promote the fight. They say they're going to kick the other guy's ass. So it's not really. I don't even count it anymore when the guy says he's going to kick another guy's ass. I use other people when they say it, but MMA, it's pretty. Most of the time, the guy's pretty quick to lose his post. One lady's unbeatable, one guy's unbeatable, and then they get killed. Mm-hmm. I remember when the Cyborg was unbeatable, and she just got destroyed. Rousey, of course, but they make people out like, oh, the woman who just got destroyed the other day, Nunez.
Yeah.
You watch her like 5 fights, like she's never gonna lose this woman.
And then and stop that. And then
Yeah.
came down there with how big the Masvidal Covington fight, was, and the after scenes of that in terms of Masvidal meeting him in that restaurant there.
I think he lost. He was really liked a lot. He had that one knee against the guy who the wrestler, and he became real popular. But he probably was treated like he was better than he was. He's probably just like a good, solid pro fighter who was a good fighter who just wasn't like a superstar fighter. But he'd been in the game. He's from Miami too.
Yes.
The Miami guys are like. I grew up with guys like Dan Levitard talking and Sugat. I remember they used to have a local show only in Florida. Yeah, so and then they got to ESPN, but Levitard used to write for the Herald. He was like the main guy. Him and Greg Cody. I have in my book, and you can talk about my book of Freezing Cold Takes NFL. Greg Cody is in the book. He wrote an article in 1993 that we should trade Dan Marino and keep the backup quarterback Scott Mitchell.
Oh no! Come on, Greg! Greg made that take, really, Fred?
Yeah, he talked to me about it. It's really very famous in Miami. Very famous.
Greg,
Marino had played about 10 straight years without getting hurt. I mean, the last time he was hurt was like 1983, where he missed a game. That was his rookie year. And in '93. He got hurt. He tore his Achilles against the Browns. He was out for the year. And we hadn't seen that in forever. And Scott Mitchell was the backup. Scott Mitchell was our backup for like 3 years. You don't get that now. Like backups don't stay for like 3 years on teams. They move around. But so he knew the offense and everything. And he had 2 or 3 great games. And he was like 3-0. He had a great passer rating. And that's when he wrote the article. He's like, Marino's 33. Let's keep this guy Mitchell. And Mitchell did that at the perfect time because the next that summer, '94 was the first summer, or '94. It was the second summer of free agency, and it was the first summer of free agency where there was a salary cap, and he came out of it because his contract ran out, and he came out of it and got a huge deal with the Lions, and he to mixed results, but he was like the first example of like the overinflated pay quarterback from the free agency. But Cody wanted to keep him because he knew we were going to have to pay. We weren't going to be able to keep them both because of the salary cap. So we had to. So Cody's like, let's keep Mitchell, the young guy. Marino is 33. Let's get rid of him. And he got a lot of shit for it. It was infamous article. And so I have my book is like a lot of articles from the past, a lot of history from the past. Green Bay with Reggie White was huge because at that time, free agency, people thought nobody was going to want to go to Green Bay.
Yep.
Nobody was going to want to go to Green Bay because it's cold. And then free agency, everyone thought everyone was going to go to LA. Keith Byers is like this. There's only one running back on each LA team. So like nobody's just going to go to LA just because it's LA. And the team was like 4 running backs. So people are going to go to these other teams. And Reggie White just changed the narrative. He was the first big free agent. So I have a lot of material on that, stories on that, like where people are talking about Reggie White and how they shouldn't sign him, or he's no way he's going to go to Green Bay, stuff like that. But the funniest thing about that was, this is the funniest story. Green Bay, Reggie White came up with it was the first free agent. He got courted by like so many teams, like 7 teams. It was like a college recruiting on steroids. Like he got mink coats from everybody. They don't do that now. But Reggie White was courted by every team, and he had these things he wanted to do. He wanted to start a ministry. He wanted to be able to play a place where he could win a championship. All these stuff. And then he said he also wanted to start a ministry for underprivileged kids in like poor neighborhoods and in like ghetto type neighborhoods. And so inner city type neighborhood. So Green Bay didn't meet that criteria.
At all.
So,
I mean,
right, at all. So,
Milwaukee's a little far. A little bit.
Milwaukee was like an hour or so away. So that's what like Ron Wolf and eventually stuff. It was idealistic of him because eventually when he started to get the packages, the money packages, like that drove everything. But it was idealistic. But they were like, well, there's inner cities and we'll help you get started in Milwaukee and all that stuff. So in the paper, like the following week, like Green Bay touts himself as like this really nice city, no crime, everything's so great. All the Green Bay people, even the police, like there's a bad area. There's a bad area over here. We have a lot of crime. I arrested this guy. Because of Reggie White, they wanted to find an area in Green Bay where they could say, oh, we are a crime-ridden city. We do have crime. Like, trying to find ways to get him to come. But eventually they were smart. They gave him guaranteed money to Green Bay. It was between them and San Francisco. And that's why he went to Green Bay. But it was idealistic to do all this, but eventually money drove it. Like he thought that but money usually drives it. Like he wasn't getting guaranteed money from San Francisco, but that was so funny because any other time they would tout how great their city is, but just because Reggie White wanted to go there, now we had cops saying I made 2 arrests the other day. Yeah.
that right there is what makes it fascinating, man, because I was so hyped to see you be able to get this book with Running Press and have this come out in August for this great book, Freezing Cold Takes, NFL Football's Media's Most Inaccurate Predictions and the Fascinating Stories Behind Them. I want to ask you, for you in this whole bookmaking process, without revealing any other stories that you went and had, so people can go get this book or not. What was the thing for you that surprised you in all your research?
How much less hot taking there was back then. I mean, I guess they're probably even in the video, even in ESPN stuff. I don't have those clips. Like I didn't have an archive of like NFL Live. If I did, I would be like. But there was so much less in the '90s. There was when people wrote articles, they wrote them much more nuanced than when people make a tweet. So they thought about it more. So when people really wrote an article, they went all in. But other than that, it's hard to find that much stuff from the '90s. But that really kind of resembled hot takes. There were articles like that, like the Dan Marino article was one of them. But you'd see that now on a show, on that Greg Cody take about Dan Marino's car, you'd see that by like 6 tweets would be on that, like while Scott Mitchell was playing. And it would be talked about. I mean, you'd see that a bunch of times on like Nick Wright's show. Nick Wright would say, like that happen all the time now, but back then it was the biggest deal because you don't see that very much. And once it gets picked up nationally, because not everybody saw the Miami Herald, it was a big thing, but there's just not that much stuff. So it was really interesting to find some of that stuff. I tried to go back as much as I could to eras where it was easier to I mean, people didn't know about as much. Like the Dallas Cowboys with Herschel Walker. When they traded Herschel Walker, everyone gave Jimmy Johnson so much crap for it because he gave up all the draft. He didn't get anybody in return. The players they got the Vikings in return, none of whom Jimmy Johnson wanted to keep. That's what they were judging it on, and they were just a bunch of average players. And then they turned it into so many different draft picks, and when you have so many draft picks, eventually some of them are going to be really great. So, but that type of stuff. But now, like a big trade like that, it's so big. It's so big. It's like I mean, it's so much. It's so discussed. Like remember Tyree getting traded for Isaiah Thomas, and there's all sorts of draft picks involved or whatever. It was like the biggest deal. Everybody talks about it. Then it was kind of like on the peripheral.
Yeah,
like it happened. Yeah, it's like you it was a big. They talk about it now as the biggest trade in football, but back then it was a big deal, but it wasn't like it was a big deal because the Vikings got Herschel Walker.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like everything else. So yeah, and it's great to go back and see what everybody was thinking at certain times, and kind of making a timeline of it because people kind of forget. I have a chapter on Chip Kelly, and because when Chip Kelly started when
The
he won
revolution.
the first game against Washington, he had Michael Vick throwing it everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
and Deshaun Jackson and LaShawn McCoy and all that. And everyone thought there was a new offense is going to be just like Oregon. And it turned out not to be like that. But he was a good offensive coach the whole time, most of the time. Even though he couldn't get along with his players,
Yep.
and he traded. But going into when Chip Kelly went into the NFL, everyone just assumed if he can get his offense to be good, he's going to be amazing. But nobody thought about how Chip Kelly can't get along with anybody. Chip Kelly's stubborn. So it ended up he was good at offense. It wasn't like Oregon's offense. That was like impossible to replicate in the NFL. But the offense wasn't the problem. It was everything else.
Yeah.
He traded McCoy. He traded Deshaun Jackson. He let Jeremy Maclin go. Vic, I get it. The guy was getting hurt all the time. But he made Nick Foles good, and then he traded him for Sam Bradford the next year.
And then we saw how that.
Yeah. Right. So it's like everything about the Chip Kelly thing was they focused on one thing, and they didn't focus on anything else. And none of his players liked him.
Yeah.
That's the type of thing. You start to come back with the timeline. You really look at it. The sole focus was on offense, and if he could do good in offense, he'd be great. But if he could get along with his players, he'd be in the league now. He'd be like Andy Reid.
Exactly. And that's and you had a lot of people bask at his altar over this and how they were going in with the tanks with that. And I guess one thing where you have a follow-up book, you could probably get a lot of old radio clips, particularly here with WFAN in New York, where you get all the hot takes there because they really went from Francesa and Russo to how I guess Dan down there was emerging, although Dan is way more nuanced in it and obviously wants to talk about things other than sports because he wants to keep it.
Yeah, he's big in that. Yeah, he's always like that.
And how Stu is a great guy who, really I just hope for the best with it and everything, how funny he is. But that's where you get probably the old school concept, with that, good sir. Just to close on this, I gotta ask you. Well, first, I'm gonna make my whole hot take because you mentioned the trades here. I feel Nick Caserio. I feel you got fleeced, Nick Caserio. I feel you got fleeced, Nick Caserio. And how, to me, I was shocked that they didn't get more for Watson with that. And really, that whole not trading the division thing, the Patriots and the Patriots really proved how that's BS. He could have used
the Bledsoe?
It was more just now recently with Watson Parker, obviously. Where I thought, honestly, with the Colts winning Watson and maybe the Titans, if they didn't get Aaron Rodgers stiffed about, he could have used them for leverage and gotten the best deal instead of saying, "Oh, I'm not going to trade you to a division rival." Well, is it either that or do you want the best value? And I think when they made that trade with the Browns, I was like, what? Like, are you giving Andrew Berry whole gifts and loves and hugs? Because I'm like, how did you allow that to happen? But we'll see.
Yeah. Well, Deshaun had to approve it, but he probably was thinking like, it's still very tenuous, everything that's going on in my life. I might as well take all this guaranteed money. and that's what he's going to do. But I guess he thinks he could win. Deshaun Watson, it's sad all around. I mean, he had a very salt of the earth vibe to him before this all happened. He was very, no matter what happens to that extent, that's kind of gone. Because of all whatever he was doing. I mean, like, it wasn't like he was like I think it's safe to say he wasn't wasn't being a very nice guy.
or just maybe a common
yeah,
sense guy
yeah,
overall.
common sense. Just,
Just giving the benefit of the doubt. Any
yeah,
that's if you're doing that. It still was like, what are you doing in terms of
right,
the whole situation that you're putting yourself in? I'm almost sounding like Lewis Riddick, getting a Lewis Riddick tone, honestly, or Bomani Jones tone with this. But you don't put yourself in those situations, particularly, and I
no,
can say this, you being also a black quarterback, you're gonna come with a little more scrutiny
right,
on things if you don't have these things in order with that. So at the very
yeah,
least with it, it's like, well, you know that you could have put yourself away to not even get in that whole predicament to begin with.
right,
I'm glad that you mentioned that when we, touch base again,
yeah,
about it, because it's just no matter any player that I may think could be a great player or whatnot, I'm gonna always criticize if they do something
oh
ridiculous,
yeah,
obviously. Let alone if it's even worse than that. But I just felt that Nick Casario, and we'll see if I'm wrong about like this. This is how you do it, people. If you're gonna make predictions and stuff, you can say, okay, a player needs to get better, a player needs to
yeah,
improve. You can't go out and just automatically say this person's gonna be a bust. Like Josh Allen, I wasn't confident. See him in that Wyoming. See him at Wyoming. It was such an inaccurate mess. I simply said he just had to really get better. He
right.
has to improve. But people will just go out, as with Benjamin Albright or Matt Miller. It's like, oh, bus. I can't see that. And
Yeah,
you put yourself up to that.
Matt Miller definitely did that with Russell Wilson. I
Yeah,
mean, and Russell Wilson was
was
one of
great.
those guys who people were loved because he had a big year at Wisconsin. Fans and other people loved Russell Wilson. Now I don't know if they thought he was going to be a top 10 pick or anything, but when the Seahawks picked him in the third round, they thought it was a steal. But Russell Wilson, a lot of guys, Matt Miller did not like him at all. And a lot of people like Kellen Moore. I think Kellen Moore was in that draft. Um, Kellen Moore had the worst arm. The worst arm.
The worst
Uh,
toy gun arm ever.
yeah. He was like Werfel. He knew where to put the ball, and he knew how to run the game. He was a great quarterback for college, but it was so obvious he was never going to play in the NFL worth shit. He was no different than the guy who won the Heisman Trophy for Oklahoma in 2003
Oh,
or 2004.
Jason White.
Jason White.
Oh,
God,
Jason White.
putty arm. Yeah, the coach for Tennessee, Heupel.
Mm-hmm.
That guy's arm. He won the national championship for Oklahoma in 2000.
Yes, he did.
His arm was really bad.
Yep.
His was about as bad, and the Dolphins picked him.
They did. It was like Roy Williams and Rocky Kalmus might as well have been the quarterback
Yeah.
of the Oklahoma team. Like
Antoine Savage.
Yep. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Brett, we gotta almost go to wrap up on this,
All
man.
right.
But one last thing, I gotta ask you: have you made in hot
Right.
that you retweeted yourself on Twitter, or have you?
Oh,
So why?
on Twitter, I never really do that much I never really tweeted that much about like takes that I did, but I get a lot wrong all the time. Like I'll post something too early, and everybody goes off on me about that. But then I have to retweet it. But then, but there was a lot of things I got wrong. I mean, I definitely had it with the Heat after they lost their first final to Dallas, and they also lost. They were down 3-2. That's when LeBron just went nuts and scored like 52 points or whatever against the Celtics, and had like the LeBron look where where he just like took over the game and they won the championship. But they were down 3-2 that series. I thought the big three was the biggest spot. Now I didn't write a huge article on it like Jason Whitlock did, but Jason Whitlock's one of my first ever really ones I really wanted to bring back. I remember when he wrote it. The big three is cooked. Blow them up, he said. He said, blow up the big three. They're cooked after that finals loss to the Mavericks. That one was one I posted a lot. But I thought the Heat were cooked. I also thought Jimbo Fisher, I was not worried about him. The FSU had been bad for so long. They'd been bad for so long. And and Jimbo Fisher came in, and he was the coach in waiting for years. under Bobby Bowden, 2-3 years at least. And he even took the job at UAB, and they nixed it. They for some reason. And so he finally got to become the head coach. I thought that wasn't worth a shit, and he just completely. Well, we had Will Muschamp come in, Urban Meyer left, and we had Will Muschamp come in, and Jimbo just absolutely destroyed him in recruiting, and got the best team ever because he took every single Florida guy from us. I don't know how he did it, but he did. And then he brought in Jamie Craig, who got Jameis Winston from Alabama, and then so the whole thing came together for him. But they had an amazing team, and just an amazing team. And so that one was my biggest one. I wasn't nervous about it. I made fun of Jimbo a lot, and he just like his recruiting is just was we couldn't handle it at UF. He just destroyed him. He destroyed Will Muschamp. I mean, Will Muschamp was just getting taken about every player he wanted. Jimbo did. The worst was fucking who's the running back for the fucking guy running back for
Dalvin Cook,
Minnesota, Dalvin Cook. Fuck, he was at UF for. He was a UF commitment for years, for like
Fred
2
got
years.
up, y'all. Fred got up. Fred was so upset that he got up, literally, with the pain.
Yeah. he was our commit for 2 years. For 2 years, he was great. He was at Central High School, and he finally and Jimbo worked on him for so long and got him to switch. We had this coach DeAndre, another Miami guy, DeAndre. What was our whatever? We had an assistant coach, a cornerback coach. He went everywhere with Muschamp. He was a defensive coordinator for Muschamp recently, but he was from Miami. He really got a relationship with Cook, and we got Cook. And for so long he was a UF guy, and then by the end he was toying with us. And finally, he said, "Oh yeah, it's fine, whatever." And then he took. Then Jimbo took him. Same thing with Tim Jernigan. All those guys from that stupid FSU team, half of them. That team, man. Timmy Jernigan was one of them. They had a receiver who stunk. Thank God they took from us. Another guy from West Palm Beach, Newman High, Travis Rudolph.
Yep.
I think he got arrested.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was good though.
Him and Fred Rouse were like the biggest of the last, like in this 21st century. Both him and Fred Rouse. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Fred Rouse was, but Travis Rudolph was good.
Yeah,
Travis Rudolph was a good player. Fred Rouse sucked.
Yeah,
but there was a high school there was a high school that in West Palm that our last recruiting class we were able to send off FSU. We got Jacoby Brissett, who transferred because Will Muschamp liked Jeff Driscoll over him, and then and Matt Elam, who got himself in a lot of trouble. He couldn't hack in the league. But this one high school, and Nick O'Leary played for them. But he went to FSU. But that was the high school. Jacoby Brissett was like, they won the state championship. And then there was the high school, Seminole High School in Sanford, home of the infamous Trayvon Martin. Sanford, yeah. Sanford Seminole High had this guy back in '80s. It was this guy by the name of I forgot. They had these three guys, Andre DeBose,
yes,
and these two other guys, and they beat Northwestern in the state championship game. It was the greatest game, and those guys were supposed to be great. They didn't turn out to be great, but like there's a lot of great guys like that. There was, but yeah. So Lakeland High, the national championship team from UF, a lot of guys from Lakeland. Pouncey twins. Chris Rainey, the speedster guy, was on that team. They won the national. They won the championship. Yeah. But we don't get guys like that anymore. There's a place called IMG Academy in
who I got an interview with Tennis in terms of that. So
yeah. tennis was
the thing.
Nick, but it
Nick
started out as the Nick
Bolselli.
Bollettieri Tennis Academy. Yeah, and I think that's where I think they mentioned it probably in the Williams sisters thing. I don't think the Williams sisters went there, but they talked about it. Yeah.
They went and were like a little advised by him, but they didn't go with him
Yeah.
full time. Obviously, whether Andre Agassi is who
Andre
played
Agassi
the
played
bat.
there, right? Yeah.
And what a great guy Andre is, by the way.
Yeah.
And also, he literally had Sharapova there. And let's just say Sharapova,
Yeah.
terrible person. Terrible person.
Really?
I actually interviewed her like in terms of like a press conference, and she didn't like really criticize. But let's just say they can't stand how I keep it real like that.
I can't imagine how. Oh yeah, because all of her stuff about Serena. She really didn't like her. No, I wouldn't like her. I wouldn't like her. I mean, like you're coming in, you're the best or whatever, and Serena comes in. It's like, I mean, it just, and even when Serena was hurt or like had to take time off, she always lingered. Like you knew when she was coming back, she was just going to destroy you. What's the Polish girl? That Polish girl got really that girl Radwanska, who was a really good player. She had to play Serena every time.
Well, it was both Aga and Caroline, who's still friends with.
Yeah.
I mean, her and Caroline Wozniacki.
Oh yeah.
They're still so close. Where she just gave birth to her first child with David Lee.
David Lee.
Look at you, boy.
He was at UF.
Yeah,
he was at UF when I was there.
You and James
freshman year at UF. Yeah.
Look at you, James. Look at you hanging out with James White and David Lee.
Now, James White, White, and David Lee
two
were both the big recruits that year, and they had the dunk contest.
Yes.
David Lee took off his shirt, did the back, but Flight White was really, really. He would come up with these dunks.
Yes.
And but Billy Donovan did not like him because he was lazy on defense.
He was.
He wouldn't switch. Really. And he transferred after his first year. He quit. David Lee played 4 years for you.
If he had that Corey Brewer mentality, James White, he would have been signed in the league. He would have. And I was glad for Billy to get that, class, and then really build up towards obviously you getting
that class. The David Lee class never made it out of the second round.
Yeah,
we had Anthony Roberson, who chuck up shots, Matt Walsh. And but Billy used to recruit so well, and then he couldn't get the big blue chip guys. Corey Brewer was the only blue chip guy. McDonald's All American out of that team that won the national championship twice. Yep. And
three.
Horford was okay. He was okay. Joakim Noah was a high recruit, but he was not a McDonald's All American. And he didn't play his first year. He almost left. But by the end of the freshman year, Horford and Brewer were starting, but Noah didn't play at all. Yeah. And then we had the one white guy who shot the threes so well. It was a perfect combo. They were double team. Lee Humphrey. This guy would never miss. And he was clearly never was going to make the NBA. Yep. And probably played in Europe for so long with.
And then be a future coach somewhere. I gotta see where Lee Humphries. I gotta see where he's at right now.
Torian Green, the new UF coach just hired Torian Green as a player development. So he's back at UF. I don't know what Joakim Noah's doing, but he has a ton of money. Horford's still going strong. Brewer's been on like 2017. The funny thing about Brewer is he never could shoot. But in the UCLA game, the game with Russell Westbrook and Aaron Aflalo, where we destroyed them. It was 2008. Brewer kept making all these threes. And Bill Simmons is like, this guy's got to be number one pick of the draft. He can shoot, he can dribble, I was like, this is the one game he's made threes.
Bill,
he's a great player, but he couldn't shoot.
See, I gotta tag him for that take right there when we post this, because that right there, he wouldn't have said that, and he needs to own that all the way.
He has a lot of them. Yeah.
Great, sir. We're gonna do this more, especially even before the book comes out. But
definitely.
Classic. Give this man a round of applause right here, and to give the great sing-off song for the great Fred Segal, Mr. Old Takes Exposed, OTE. For those that have wrong takes, we gotta play this great track. For what?
Never let up, forget, but don't forget, girl, keep your head.
Keep your head on,
And when he
everybody.
tells you you
For
ain't
bad
don't
takes,
believe.
because he loves his
And if you
Tupac.
can't learn to love you, you should.
Want to know great sports movie take?
You don't need.
Remember the movie Sunset Park?
Yes,
Sunset
sir.
Park with yeah. I've seen it so many times. It's so good. With Rhea Perlman. It has Terrence Howard was the center who couldn't. He was nervous, and then there was. But the guy who's the shooter in Sunset Park, Drano, was 1995 with Sunset Park. 10 years later, he was the same type of player for Samuel L. Jackson's Coach Carter team.
Look at how they recast it. Look at how they recast Fred Joe.
10 years later.
Where it's like, Fred Joe, like, how are you still in high school?
He was in high school.
Like, how are you still getting recast in high school, Fred Joe Star? Like, come on.
Yeah.
You know,
Fred Joe Star was on that team, and he was also in the Save the Last Dance. Like he was the buddy who was the bad influence on the guy who was the dancer.
With Julia Stiles.
Julia Stiles, yeah, Julia Stiles. Made it to Juilliard based on audition alone. They just pulled right at the audition. But never happened. Never would happen.
Yep. John Patrick Thomas of that fame.
So okay, yes,
Indeed.
John Patrick Thomas. He was also in he was the lover in Cruel Intentions. The guy who Selma Blair to him, and he died or something. He got hit by a car, maybe, or no, he caused the death of the Brian Felipe's character, right?
Yep.
But yeah, so that's that guy. He's not the same guy as what's the guy's name who was in Finding Forrester?
In terms of
he's really good. He still acts now, pretty much.
Yeah, in Finding Forrester, it was
He may have been on the Coach Carter.
It was Ron Brown who you're thinking of.
I know Channing Tatum was on it. Yeah, Ron Brown. And then who was the Antoine Fisher?
Antoine Fisher was with my man
still acts.
That did with Denzel Farquhar, I think his name.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's still an actor.
Yep. I'm telling you, Fred, you are fully esteemed on your full black movie trivia.
Oh yeah. I love it. I grew up on all the shows. I mean, like there were Martin, Jamie Foxx show.
Yep.
CW had some good ones.
And I'm a big fan of Rock. You know, when Rock was on
Rock, yeah.
Before, you know, because it really was.
I was young.
Yeah.
I was young. It was good. It was funny the first year. Jamie Foxx actually was on that show a lot. But then it got so dramatic. It stopped being a sitcom. They didn't need the laugh track anymore.
He talks about it that way where he really wanted to go and like, it was heavy. It was really heavy. I would have loved to see your reaction live time.
No, it's just like I was young. I liked it. But Living Single, I liked. It was around the same time. But Living Single, when after season 2 of Living Single, wasn't as good anymore. I don't know what happened, but season 5 of Living Single was an absolute monstrosity. It should never be mentioned again. It was such a bad show by then. I don't know what they did. They kicked off T.C. Carson. They booted off everybody. I don't even know what they had new characters in. I think Kim Fields left. It was terrible. It was season 1 and 2 of Living Single was amazing. But that show just sucked by the end. Man. I don't know what happened. It was terrible. But it was great at some point. Martin was pretty good. Jamie Foxx show was great. What the weird guy, the nerdy guy, and then the girl. They just had something about the girl said Michael Jordan. She could have had Michael Jordan. She didn't do it.
Yeah.
She's from Miami too.
Yes, she is. She is proudly Miami all the way.
I think she went to my high school.
Okay.
I went to North Miami Beach High School in Miami. and it was and I think that possibly she went there, but not when I was there. I was after her. I was younger, but she was big on the Jamie Foxx show. Was really good. The Parkers, when I was in college, the Parkers were on. That was pretty good. First 2 years, but then it got a little old. I used to like the Parkers. I was like, hey, Mr. Ogilvy. Mr. Ogilvy's been in so much stuff. He's in so much stuff.
Sir, I'm just impressed by this, Fred. I'm really impressed by this, but we gotta bring you back.
Yeah, we have to bring him back. Let's talk. Movies is the best. The movies are the best. Like Above the Rim was great. My favorite movie of all time in the '90s, Mo Money.
Yes, sir. Oh.
Damon Wayans and Marlon Wayans. I know that movie by heart. The original singing lawyer. You have that singing defendant clip.
Mm-hmm.
It was the singing lawyer clip. There's a singing lawyer in that show. And then Damon Wayans used to be funny. And back when Living Color, when Jim Carrey was the white guy from Living Color, we knew him as that. When he was Ace Ventura, we had a movie. We like the white guy from Living Color has a movie, and it's really funny.
Yep. And by the way, Mo Money, 30th anniversary in it coming up on July 24th. So there you go.
Yeah, people are, and that's a big thing. People talk about that.
I mean, I'm gonna be celebrating it for sure because
I will.
Those set anniversaries for those type of classics like that. Oh, for sure. I'm gonna be celebrating all the way.
Guess who the guy is giving? Guess the guy. There was a guy from the Academy who was talking about Harry Lennox, the guy from the Academy who was getting all into the thing. That's the nerdy guy who was Stacey Dash's boyfriend in that show, in that movie. Before he came in, he goes, "What does a man with a 1-inch penis eat for breakfast?" Well, this morning I had baby food and therapy. Keith Hadding told me that joke.
This man, give you the multiple ding sound, sir.
More money.
You have been more than special. I didn't even think we could have just had a non-sports show and talked about 90s rap movies with the great Fred Segal. We will talk about this and more. Make sure that you follow, if you haven't already, you follow this man's great account. Exposed on Twitter. Follow and pre-order his new book. His book coming out soon in August. Make sure you get it. Football media's most inaccurate predictions and the fascinating stories behind them. And for any of my colleagues in media who continue to make major hot takes, including my good colleague from Sports Illustrated, Ashley Nicole Morris, because she certainly is real with the take.
Oh, is that? Wait. Nicole, the Miami one?
Yep, Ashley Nicole Morris.
She's had some Miami takes about the Heat.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, I can imagine. I've just retweeted her before.
Yeah, she is real and does not back on the predictions, even though it's like.
I remember her. Yeah.
But I love her because like we did the show on Clubhouse, and she just really at least is truly Brooklyn. She's a Knicks fan, #1. But now we're in Miami.
She seems to have a pulse on the Heat. She talks about the Heat a lot.
She does.
Yeah.
She's got it all the way in terms of the BAM takes and all that. She's got it all the way. And it made it.
Knicks are great. The Knicks are fodder like crazy. After game 1 this year, it was amazing.
We will talk about that and some stuff. For all those, make sure you keep your head up with 4 takes and everything. Because it's important. You know, because we got to say that if you have bad predictions, keep your head up now. And see you later for the great Fred Segal, 06 Exposed, Overall Overtime. We are out. Finito. Bye-bye, everybody.